Hey guys, welcome to Roll Call Freedom Podcast. I welcome you in, have a seat. I want you guys to share, like, and comment on this page. I'm so excited that you decided to join me tonight. Listen, make sure you follow me. Tag yourself or turn on your notifications so that every Monday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, you will get the notifications and invite others to watch along with you. Today's show, we're talking about evolving from elder to elder, how this Black man was able to evolve and overcome extreme trauma, setbacks, breakups, and other life obstacles to becoming the well-respected man that he is today. I love the fact that he is an elder in the community. He's a father, a husband, a leader, and most importantly for me, my sanity, he's my mental health authority and my mentor. Tonight's guest is Mr. Gary Eagleton. As we move forward in this conversation, for those who are new to this platform, my name, Uhuru Wingi, actually means freedom and abundance. I invite you all to come in, take a seat, relax, and let's get educated and celebrate this man's evolution. Tonight's Evening Mocha is brought to you by none other than myself, right from my thoughts. The Evening Mocha has transitioned from morning mochas. Now, if you follow my personal page, you'll get morning mochas on Thursdays, every week on Thursdays. But for you guys who follow me here on this platform, on the Road Called Freedom, we've evolved morning mocha to even espresso. The Bible declares that there are many members, but one body. Why are we trying to tell the other members how to function? Tonight, I also want to share with you a poem. For those of you who are struggling, I got this poem yesterday. For those of you who are struggling to find your identity, your purpose, who you might be. I know for me, I'm looking for my lane, how to move forward after being a wife, a mother, a daughter, a sister, and all of the other titles. I'm looking to see who I was before. My poem is called Before. Before I was anything in this earth realm, I am his well-beloved. Before I was Gladys's daughter and Otis's little girl, I am his seer. For he knew me before I was formed in my mother's womb. Before I was molested and raped, I am the apple of his eyes. Before you said what you said to me and about me, he created me, and I was fearfully and wondrously made. Before you broke me down, he is the author and finisher of my faith. Before you, I was his, the great I am. So as we move forth in this podcast, I hope that you enjoy my guest. Today, we're going to move to our question of the day. And the question of the day is actually homework, because I want you to join in. I want you to comment. I want you to be engaged. And so I'm going to give y'all some homework for the question of the day. And the homework is, who were you before life happened to you? Can you remember? Just think about that. If you guys journal, I invite you to write in your journals. If you care to share next week or even on this post, if you care to respond to that question, who were you before life happened? How were you before life happened? Were you kind and gentle, or had you always been a little tense with bitterness? Right? So we're going to move forward. Share your thoughts in the comments. We're going to move forward and introduce my guests. First, we're going to go with what you got on. We're going to go into what you got on. So tonight I'm wearing, for me, it's a twofold question. What I have on, I love thrifting. Oh my God, I love thrift stores. And at some point, I'm going to introduce y'all to my app where it tells you where to find great buys, great everything. So what I have on, y'all, is an Anne Klein. The jacket is Anne Klein and the top is also Anne Klein. Both of them still had the tags on, right? So they were still brand new. I caught both of them on sale for like $10.99 each, right? So I got these I'm in Houston, Texas, and I received these great bonuses to my closet. They're cream, for those of you who are going to listen to me via the podcast. It's a cream outfit, and the top is a silk cream top. And I bought both of these from the Goodwill on Westheimer near River Oaks. You guys are going to have to Google it. I don't have the address, but it's the Goodwill that's located in the River Oaks area, right? So that's what I have on. And these garments tell you I'm not cheap, because I do like quality and high-end pieces, but I am frugal. That is a part of my personality. And my theory with what you got on is saying that you always wear something that gives us a peek at your personality. These great buys give you a peek at my personality. I love a good buy and for a value price. Tonight's topic is evolving from elder to elder. It talks about, for the younger people who know something about Beyonce's Baby Boy Stay on My Mind. Okay, that was a different baby boy from the baby boy that was played where Taraji P. Henson played in the movie called Baby Boy. The movies, Taraji P. Henson's love interest in the movie Baby Boy, he was immature. He did immature things, and the baby boy that Beyonce sung about was the one who made you glitter and made your heart flutter. He was a mature man who excited you. Tonight's guest is Gary Eagleton, and we're going to talk about his evolution through the highs and lows of becoming a well-respected elder, not just in the Church of God in Christ, but also in the community, within his family. But we'll be right back right after this quick break, and then we'll have our guest on. Stay tuned.
Don't let the mask inhibit your style. Go to www.foxylips01boutique.com and order our line of matte lip gloss in a variety of shades, colors, and bling with no mask transfer. And yes, we even have a line of vegan lipstick. Order today at www.foxylips01boutique.com. Use order code UHURU for a 20% discount off orders of over $25. Go to www.foxylips01boutique.com today.
Hey guys, it's your boy Zay, the best ex that you could ever want around. And I want you to tune in to my show, Legends Speak, on Wednesdays on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you listen to for your podcast platform, I'll be there. Legends Speak. What is Legends Speak? I'm glad that you asked. This is a platform where I invite people who I consider legends, and I interview them about their professional career and just get details about how they were able to be so successful while fighting mental health issues. So if you're interested, which I know that you are, tune in to Legends Speak with your boy Zay, the best ex that you could ever want around.
And we're back. Welcome back, everybody. Again, we're talking a Black man's evolution, evolving from elder to elder. Don't forget to like, share, and most of all, I wait for your comments. I love for you to be actively engaged. As I said, my mentor, Gary Eagleton, is a father, a husband. He's a Vietnam veteran, and I'm going to talk to him about the things that shaped him into the man that I met as my mentor today. We're going to ask Gary what you got on. Can you hear me yet? Hey, Gary, what you got on? Now, I'm going to leave him because I know that he probably has my most favorite thing, those Chucks on.
Yes, I do.
You got them Chucks on?
I have on black ones today.
Hey, Gary, why do you favor those Chucks so much?
You know, I've never thought of that. An answer for that question has never come up before, but it's kind of a good fit, even though they don't have good part supports, never did. But it's just a reminder, I guess, from back in the day when I wore them, and when I saw them, I thought, I'll just get more Chucks.
I hear you have, I think we talked about before how you have help. I think you say your grandkids pick out chucks for you and such.
My kids have done that. They've said, you need this, you need these, you don't get those. That when they were around more often. Everybody's kind of off at school now.
Right.
So kind of the only one that's left nearby is a 6-year-old.
Oh, okay. So they still, but that was probably kind of cool. And I like the fact that you have them chucks on, because to me, the fact that you have those chucks on and you've been wearing them for, not calling you a dinosaur or nothing, but for eons, because I remember getting them as a little girl, and they were like, we got them for Payless for like $10. You know, they were very inexpensive. And now we have the first lady, the first Black American vice president rocking chucks, right? Talk about evolution and things coming full circle. And now I think they're a little pricey. I think they're now like $100, but what do I know? So we're going to hop right into this discussion. Gary, I want to ask you a different question of the week because of who you are. First, I want you to introduce yourself, and then I'll go into the question of the week. So introduce yourself to our listening audience.
You want the short version or the long version introduction?
The short version, please, sir. Thank you very much.
Short version, I now live in Acres Homes. I do volunteer work throughout the community, throughout various churches and schools, and spent some time doing volunteer work with the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I spend time with that 6-year-old granddaughter. Don't really have any what I call hobbies. I just kind of move along from one day to the next and try to enjoy it to the best of my ability.
You also tell us about your degree and what it's in. I want to know a little bit about your background.
Oh, okay. I have a bachelor's degree in behavioral science. I have a certification in nonprofit management from the University of Houston. My undergraduate degree was from the University of Houston Clear Lake. My undergraduate degree, but my certificate in nonprofit management was also University of Houston.
And he is also modest because he also does great work with NAMI, okay, as a mental health advocate, right? And he also served this great country in the Vietnam War. So let's ask you this question. I just wanted you guys to know he's very versed in mental health. He's so modest about that. He's somebody that I can safely go to. I want to ask you this. Do you still think in all of your years of working in the mental health community as a Black man, do you think that the Black men especially are still leery of, have we made any strides in getting Black men, especially older Black men, to go to therapy?
Probably not. Probably not. And there's probably even more, of course, that are considering psychiatrists and or psychologists today, probably more than there were when I was a kid. But the numbers are still low, not only for males, but also for females. And
so the numbers are still low for Black females as well?
It doesn't compare when you look at other folks that are seeking mental health services.
Okay. So culturally, in a cultural comparison, we are still coming up at the bottom of those cultures that are willing to seek counseling. Do you think that we're going to go back to when you were becoming a man? Do you think that the taboos of us talking about culturally, it was a taboo for us to discuss mental health issues, especially men? You know, you guys were coached in a man doesn't express pain or hurt or express emotions in a certain way. Do you think that those taboos are still what's driving the fact that we seek therapy or mental health counseling at a lower rate than our cultural counterparts?
I think that there are still challenges. I think that we still see mental health as a weakness, and so we don't talk about it. Often, if we do talk about anything that's more mental health related, for those of us that are grew up in a church and are members of a church and that believe in some degree of on some degree of a spiritual level, we would prefer to go there than going to psychiatrists and psychologists and that sort of thing. But at the same time, one of the stats that's real is that the percentages of psychiatrists, psychologists, and or masters of social workers that are Black, that are African American, those numbers are really, really small. So we don't find people that look like us, that think like us, that act like us to treat us in those areas.
So, going back to your childhood, you were raised up in the Kojic or Church of God in Christ foundational principles. You were Kojic growing up in that religious base, and so going from that, how old were you when you went to Vietnam?
When I went to Vietnam, I was 19. And as a matter of fact, that was the average age of the soldiers in Vietnam, 19.
19 years old, coming out of it. So when did you realize before you went to Vietnam that you were a Black man? And let me explain. Let me give the mainly the audience. Let me give you the reason why I asked that. I was talking to, so during this podcast, I do a lot of research about time frames and time periods that our culture grew up in, such as segregation. My mom's generation, my older brother's generation, they grew up when the South was still segregated, right? And so my uncle said to me, who is in his 80s, when I was talking to him this weekend, he said to me that he didn't realize that he was a Black child and the difference between him as a Black child and Caucasians until he really started coming of age around 16, 17 years old. And that was a wow moment for me because he said that because they grew up in that era, they didn't know anything to compare their growing up experience to, if that makes sense. So he grew up in the time frame that they had the whites only signs. Us looking back at it, we have a different lens. So we could cry foul on that, but they didn't know to automatically cry foul on that. And from what I talked to him about, it seems like places like Mississippi, Georgia, and Alabama were worse. They had a worse off experience based on the people that I've been talking to than, say, Texas. So what was your experience as a Black child growing up right here in Barrett Station?
Well, I think that was very different for us. We grew up in a community that was all Black. The schools were all Black. Our stores were Black stores. We were protected. Our community was protected, and then it was small, and it was primarily family. So we didn't have a lot of interaction at all with other than Black people.
Right.
So I do. There were a couple of things that were challenging for me. One of those was we had an insurance man who was not Black, and he came to our house on a regular basis because, of course, we were paying that. My parents were paying that insurance weekly. And that this guy would come in and he would have a seat at our kitchen table. I did not like that, but that's the way that was. And I remember when we started receiving milk delivered to our home by a white milkman. So our community was very safe. Our community was black. Our school was black. We were in between two primarily white neighborhoods, right in the midst of Highlands, Texas, and Austin, Texas. It was Barracks Station in the central.
So basically, let me ask you this: when did you experience your first encounter in knowing that you were a black man who was not appreciated in America?
Well, the first time I ever really had an opportunity to interact with numbers of other than black people was when I started college at North Texas State University, which is now University of North Texas. And that was my first time being in a community that was not all black. I was not real comfortable there, but I went there because my brother was already there and had been there for a year. But I think my life, I guess, has been a bit different because I've never had a lot of challenges around black and white issues until I just really got sick and was doing some things that were just kind of didn't make a lot of sense. But even in the military, there were prejudices were there. And you could always tell when you were in a place or in a conversation or whatever, and it was not real friendly. But for the most part, our lives were built around our family. We were always protected by our family. We had family reunions. We had family get together, and we had a lot of people in our family.
So you transitioned. You went away to Vietnam, and you were married before you went away, and you came back from that experience differently. So when did you kind of snowball to become a different man that maybe your wife, your family, your children did not recognize? Let's move up to that part.
Well, at the age of 19, like I said, that's when I was injured in Vietnam, which resulted in the amputation of my left leg at about 7.5 inches below my knee. And for the next 30 years or so after that, I focused in my own way of healing that physical injury, I wanted to be able to walk without a noticeable limp. That was a time when the military support system, the VFWs and those organizations, for the most part, the people that were a part of that group did not look like me. So I was not ever comfortable there. So I didn't get that support. And there were no African-American VFWs or groups that I could be a part of. But in becoming a whole man, my goal was learning how to walk. My goal was being able to walk without a leg. Without a limp. My first job employment was at a railway service company in I cannot think of the name of the community right now. Burren Railway Service Company, one of the first African Americans to work in the office in Channelview, Texas, to work at that office. And I went at that time and was in a number of other situations at first black. I was one of the first African Americans to work inside the offices at Upjohn. So I didn't have a lot of skirmishes with black and white, but we were just protected from that and didn't find myself in those situations.
So I want to talk about not just the racial injustices that may or may not have contributed to you eventually seeking out help. I read in your notes today about how you got married to your second wife. You were married to your first wife and the mother of your kids for a significant amount of time, 25 plus years. Your children there was an incident that happened when you got married to your second wife, and your son made a comment, get used to that. So that indicated that you didn't necessarily come back from Vietnam whole. You lost a leg, but you had some mental things that you had to get around too. And that's really what I want to talk about, how I want to talk about those things because I want to show to us in the Black community that no matter what happens to us, that we're strong enough to get through it. And so I want to pull out of your life story talking points to highlight those things. So I want to go back again. When you came back, I imagine whatever went on in Vietnam, coming back with a missing limb. And I know your mental goal was to walk again, but how did you navigate through what obviously some emotional trauma that you had?
One of the things that's always been real solid in my life was prayer. Like I said, growing up in the Church of God in Christ Church, my mom would tell me often that she had calluses on her knees because she prayed for me constantly, that sort of thing. So that's always been kind of foundational for us. Our belief system, our belief in God, our prayer life, and those kinds of things. So even when my life was such that it was falling apart, I still believed that it could get better eventually. I lived in it. I wrestled with it because, again, what happened, many of the things that I was involved with, because they were so far removed from the way I was brought up, that the shame and the guilt kept me away from my family. So I just got involved and engaged with stuff that all of the people that knew me at that time had not known me for more than about a year, because I just stayed away from my family. I didn't have any friends because you have to be available to have friends. So I didn't really have any friends. I was fortunate enough, and let me go back though, because there were three very, 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 very strong women in my life. My mom, who was a real praying woman. My first wife is the mother of my children that was strong enough to be able to carry the load of raising two Black men and an African-American daughter in the midst of everything that was going on during those early 70s and on into the late 70s, and then out of high school and then off to college. I did a great job with raising my children. They're awesome. They're wonderful. They're educated. I love them with all my heart. I was fortunate to meet another strong woman that helped me to realize and understand the power of that first woman to help me at least move along and find some balance somewhere, if that makes sense.
So let me pin it right there. So what I hear you saying is, yes, when you came back from Vietnam, you was not necessarily a whole man in more ways than just your leg missing, which led you down a path where you eventually isolated yourself from family, friends, kind of like the prodigal son. You know, he went off. He was not, he became something different than who he was raised to be. He found himself eating the slop of the world, and he came to himself. And your coming to yourself was a process with strong women in your life that did not throw you away or give up on you, from your first wife who stayed with you 25 plus years, almost 30 years, and then your second wife who came in. And not only, I want to highlight these things because to me it's important for our community to understand that first and second wives it's not a competition because your second wife came in and she helped you to see and applaud the work and the resilience that your first wife had in supporting you the best way she could without the resources, especially in areas from people that look like you, because in the 70s and 80s we didn't have a lot of. Right now we have a lot of. I say a lot because I'm seeing more in my lifetime than I'm sure you saw. Black folk who specialize in mental health, and even would consider the background you came from and what you went through to become who you were to just counsel. So they were not just throwing educated terms at you. So you had the support of two women and a third, including your mom. But I want to highlight how it is so important that we're not in competition to say who got the better man. It's just that you were able to transition into better from one marriage to the next, because number one, resources became available. And from reading your information today, not only were resources became available, you had a brother-in-law specifically who encouraged you to seek counseling. And encourage you when you went back, and the first time you went, nothing, you wasn't impressed. The second time you went, still nothing, but he encouraged you to keep going, which looks like, from reading your notes, was the beginning of you addressing PTSD, which wasn't a term in Vietnam, from what I understand. Does that sum it up a little bit?
Well, sort of, kind of, yeah. My brother-in-law, who was also wounded in Vietnam, encouraged me to go to the VA and get some attention and get some help. And because I trusted him, I went again, and I went again, and I went again. But one of the things that's really important there, when I use the word trust, is that's become sort of a mantra of mine, that no significant change, no significant learning occurs without a mutually trusting and respectful, significant relationship. Where there's no relationships, we remain at that same place where we have been, and we continue there, and we continue to rest in that. When I was told by the doctors at the VA that when I got the diagnosis for post-traumatic stress disorder, it was a shock. It was because, again, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, was associated with the brain, and it was associated with mental illness. And hell, I'm not crazy. I was angry. I was offended because I'm a Black man, and you can fill in the blank. I'm a Black man, and we don't. And we could all fill in that blank. You can fill it in the way you want to, but at the time, I had not spent much time at all considering the word stigma. I don't think I've ever even used the word stigma, but stigma is the one thing that really, I think, stands between us and getting any kind of help when it's mental health related. And then when you think about how that word is defined, what does it really mean? But that gets in the way in many instances of us getting and or seeking treatment of any sort, if it's got something to do with the mental health disorder.
That word stigma keeps the Black man from seeking help, and it did back then, and it does today. In the comments section, Keith McCrae said, "Well said, Mr. Eagleton." Carolyn Thompson said, "Hello, and also let me say hi to Jackie Porter. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, DJ Q, for watching again with me this week. I appreciate you guys. Thank you, Belina Gibson, Lakeisha McCrae, Don Morris, Keith Johnson, and Candy Bogney. Thank you for joining us. When we come back, tonight's topic, evolving from elder to elder, will continue with Gary Eagleton. We'll be right back after these messages from our wonderful sponsor.
Don't let the mask inhibit your style. Go to www.foxylipso1boutique.com and order our line of matte lip gloss in a variety of shades, colors, and bling with no mask transfer. And yes, we even have a line of vegan lipstick. Order today at www.foxylipso1boutique.com. Use order code UHURU for a 20% discount off orders of over $25. Go to www.foxylips01boutique.com today.
And we're back. Welcome back, everyone. Let me remind you not to forget to like, share, and comment. Keep the comments coming. I want you to participate in the conversation. If you have any questions, opinions, or different views, please share. We don't mind. For this part of the interview, we're going to go to Mantle Up Monday. And that's where we're going to invite our guest to give us some advice to the Black man who's seeking to evolve, to overcome. And I want him to give some advice based around that word stigma. For me, in my opinion, it is very empowering to me as a Black woman when I know that a Black man is addressing his mental health issues, because a healed Black man makes the community whole. It's the start of making our culture and our community whole. Address your trauma. It's really okay. And listen, it's sexy too. There's nothing better than a Black man who is going to therapy and saying, I need help. All right. So Gary, we're going to ask you to give us some pointers because you're also a facilitator for NAMI. I want to talk about what NAMI is and also give a few pointers to our Black men out there needing counseling and how they begin to seek out help to help them through whatever issues that they're facing.
Let me just say for a minute, going back to stigma, because even though it may not be a word that we use often, and may not be a word that we think of often, maybe never use it in a sentence or anything at all. But when you look at how the word is defined, first of all, stigma is seen as a mark of disgrace. Nobody wants to carry around a mark of disgrace. Stigma is seen as a mark of disgrace. Stigma is a sign or a characteristics of dis-ease, and who wants to be walking around carrying a sign or characteristics of a dis-ease? So we stay away from it. I went to the VA because my brother-in-law suggested that I do so. And here is the deal. When I got the diagnosis, I was upset. I was very upset. I was in denial. This is just a bunch of bull. But what I did was I started to read and I started to learn about post-traumatic stress disorder. I read that it wasn't real. I read that it was a scam. I read that it was fake. It was just a way for people to get by. It was a weakness. It was a complex, serious anxiety disorder. I read that there was no cure. And then, because I kept reading, I read that there was recovery. And when I started looking for recovery rather than just drowning in the gloom, I started finding recovery information. As I started finding recovery information, I started to get more educational information. I started becoming a part of support group, other people that were at the same place that I was, struggling the same way that I was. And some of them had gotten a little bit farther and were doing some greater things. And so I learned about peers in recovery. I learned about recovery coaches. I learned about recovery-oriented systems of care. I learned about NAMI, Via Hope, and the Department of State Health Services. All of those organizations have programs of education built so that somebody can go and get the information and take it where it needs to be. Sam
So what I
says,
hear you saying, Gary, in response to the question I asked on the advice is, don't stay stuck. Educate yourself. And you did all that research back when there was probably no internet or it was just starting out or beginning. But for us as a people, and especially our Black men who are more stigmatized about seeking help and therapy and such, is do your own research. And when you get the knowledge and see what it is and what it ain't, and you get the information, you're more empowered. So let me just kind of answer my own questions based on what I heard you say. Empower yourself by researching what's going on with you. For the evolving man, if you want to set discipline, because that's what mantle is, setting discipline and having a vision statement to govern your life. A mantle is something that covers, wraps, and or conceals something or someone, right? And so pouring into that statement and this segment of the show, Mantled Up, I want to say, based on what Gary said, I'm pulling out of what he said and saying, Black man, for you to become the cover for the community, covering is not just for romantic relationships, husband and wives. I'm a sister. And I love my older brother who's around Gary's age. He grew up in segregation. We've had conversations since I became 50, which is now his permission for me to be grown. I wasn't grown until I was 50, according to my eldest brother. And for me, he's going through some of the same highs and lows that Gary went through. Gary came back with a missing portion of his leg, and my brother caught polio, right? He came down with polio, and so he had a disability as well, and of course that caused a lot of things growing up in his lifetime. But I watched my brother evolve as a man, and I love who he is today. And we're gonna have him on his dark road. He had to go into recovery as well. DJ Q in the comment section just said recovery works. Thank you, DJ, because I'm gonna have you on to tell your story to empower us women. Karen Powers said, great information. I appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight. I thank you, Gary, for being willing to share a portion of your life so that we can tell that recovery works. Empowering yourself with information works. It's okay to research and try to understand whatever you may be going through. But I'm going to say again, there is nothing like a sexy Black man who's willing to address his issues and make him whole, to be vulnerable, to have a safe place that he can talk to and with someone, to give them tools on how to navigate the feelings of not being well enough to handle whatever life traumas that you've gone through. And tonight, I'm not leaving out the Black woman. Tonight is called Mantled Up Monday, and it's about Black men healing and encouraging a Black man to do their part, do the work of healing. Okay?
I'm holding up this book, Mind Matters. And this is a book that was written by, I think, 8 African-American psychiatrists. And primarily, it's a resource guide to psychiatry for Black communities. Dr. Higgins lives here in Houston, and I think all of the others that collaborated on this live outside of this city. But if you really want a good read about good basic information about our community and mental health, this is a great read. And if you'd like, I can provide you with the website and or the email address.
I'm going to put it in the comment section after this broadcast is over. Gary, I want you to share with them about your work with especially NAMI.
Okay, NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It's the national organization. Houston has an affiliate. I'm going to say about 10 years ago, I learned about NAMI. NAMI is all about psychoeducation. NAMI is all about giving you information and allowing you to take that information somewhere and bury it and watch it grow and do something with it. They don't talk to you about what's the best medicine. They don't train you about who's the best clinician. They talk to you about what it really means when you talk to someone that has been diagnosed with schizophrenia, someone's been diagnosed with ADHD, or I'll just go on and say autism.
Mhm.
And all of the other things, bipolar disorder. If you were to hold your hand out in front and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oops, what that will remind you of is that 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 of us, depending on whose research you're looking at, is impacted by a major mental illness. Does not mean that we are diagnosed, but it means that brother, sister, spouse, dad, mom, cousin, someone in our church, someone in our school, someone close to us is impacted. 1 in 4 or 1 in 5. That is significant. But there is something that we can do about that, but you got to make that first step. Recovery is possible. I promise.
Recovery is possible. So those of you who may be drowning under the cloud of stigma, meaning you're ashamed, embarrassed, you'll find on this podcast that I will often talk about myself because it's easier to tell my own story than tell somebody else's. I suffer from extreme anxiety for most of my life, and that affected how I operated, how I thought, how I saw people. It affected how I parented, all of those things. I want to thank our guest, Gary, tonight. I'll put the information to NAMI, the website. I'll also put in the comment section. I'll also put the information for the book and the website that he displayed tonight. When we come back, we're going to get down to it with the awesome God conversation. We'll be right back.
Don't let the mask inhibit your style. Go to www.foxylipso1boutique.com and order our line of matte lip gloss in a variety of shades, colors, and bling with no mask transfer. And yes, we even have a line of vegan lipstick. Order today at www.foxylipso1boutique.com. Use order code UHURU for a 20% discount off orders of over $25. Go to www.foxylipso1boutique.com today.
Welcome back. Thank you everyone for watching and tuning in. Again, I want to thank my guests for coming in. Anything that y'all want to ask the guest, any questions, comments, he can be reached on his social media page, Gary Eagleton. He's on Facebook. Yes, he is. So connect with him. He does a lot of training, mental health first aid. If you need training, if you're in ministry, I know that some of the churches are closed, and I'm sure I could help him set up Zooms for the training. I'm not sure how they're handling that, but he was my trainer when I became a community health worker. So he helped me connect better to the community and understand how I handle more than likely someone I'm gonna run into who maybe had a mental health challenge. So, Gary, do you have any final words?
There's a statement that I get from Dr. Amen. Some of you might be familiar with Dr. Amen, but Dr. Amen says something like this. Said, if we don't take care of our brain, we could possibly lose our mind. So I remind you, let this mind be in you that was elsewhere.
In Christ Jesus. Amen. Let the church say hallelujah. Thank you, guests, again. Thank you, guys, for joining me. We're going to move into the Conversations with God segment. This is the part where I get a little vulnerable, not more than transparent, a little vulnerable. I share with you a personal conversation that I had with God out of my diary. And it's entitled, kind of flowing in what we were talking about tonight, baby boy. So I find myself, I'll be 53 this year. I'm empty nester, coming off of taking care of my dad for a long time. Thought he was able to handle living on his own with me not being far away. And some things came up, and I was really struggling with some things, haven't dated in a long time, and started encountering, of course, the opposite sex and conversating. And I was wondering, I'm healed from anxiety, but I started getting anxious about some things. Mainly, I just found that in dating, it just seemed like men didn't keep their word, whatever that word was. When they say this, for me, I'm so anal. I'll say, if you said you're gonna call me back, I'm gonna wait till you call me back because you said you're gonna call me back. And having a conversation with God about it, he simply said this, because I thought that maybe it was me, that I was tripping. Women, we can tend to be a little hard on ourselves. And I wanted to ask God, was I really being hard on myself about my expectations that when the man tells me something, especially if he's auditioning to be the head of my household, if he tells me something, I should be able to lean on what he told me. And God had to get me together. And it's in a good way, because he let me know that it's not unreasonable for me to expect that a man, or the man that is to cover me eventually, needs to be able to keep his word. Because he said this to me. He told me, God said, I'm your father. And if being who I am in your life, I set myself under my word, and I tell you that heaven and earth will pass away before my word will come back void, then it is not unreasonable that you expect a man who's seeking your hand in marriage and in that type of relationship to put himself under his word, to go all out to keep his word. Because I said that husbands should cover their wives and love their wives like Christ loved the church. And it is beyond dying for the church. Christ was an indication that God kept his word to Adam when he said, hey, I'm going to redeem you. So God went so far as to allow his only begotten son to die so that his word wouldn't become void. Why wouldn't I expect that in somebody who's seeking for a relationship or marriage with me? So ladies, let me just tell you, and even men, when somebody says something to you, I look for a sign that if he's willing to dishonor his word about simple things, how much further will he dishonor his word about life-changing issues? So in my final thoughts, again, share this podcast on social media. Next week's show is going to be hot. Y'all don't want to miss it. You'll have to tune in. I won't even give you a sneak view. You have to tune in. Catch me on Wednesday on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Until next week, my loves, I bid you adieu. Hey, this is Uhuru Wingi, inviting you to join me wherever you listen to your streaming podcast. Journey with me on this road called freedom, where I invite you into a safe haven. Come and have candid conversations with me, with inspirational stories and lessons presented to you by others who will help us identify our lane as we collectively come together on this road called freedom.